Jerry Engle. I farm near Geneva, Nebraska. Started in 1977. Back then we used to raise some wheat too because we didn't have as many pivots. It was a lot of gravity and we couldn't water it all, but now it's all corn and beans. Now it's my brother and my son and I. Between the three of us, we farm about 2,400 acres. So all 2,400 will get sprayed at least once. Most years all the bean ground, which is roughly half, that varies a little bit each year, but all of that usually gets sprayed twice, and depending on the year, I'd say half the corn acres get sprayed twice. This year I'll probably end up spraying 3,500 acres. This year has been really rough. I've been glad I've had this because lots of days it was 1 or 2 fills is all you could get, and the wind was howling 30 mile an hour the rest of the day. But if I could run all day and didn't have to chase too far from one farm to the other, I would say 500 acres would be fairly easy. Most days I've only gotten 300, and some days it's been 150 because that's all the time I could run. Just because of the amount of hours I've been able to spray. I mean, that 100 hours with my old sprayer, I wouldn't have got done. Not what I've gotten done. I've still got a little bit to do because right now we've been sitting for almost 2 weeks. Haven't been able to turn anything in the field because it's been so muddy. But do have all the corn sprayed and about half the beans done. I am really glad I did it this year because we haven't had many days to spray between mud and wind. The old type was a best way sprayer and it treated me well, but probably the biggest limiting factor was crop height with the tractor. Last year we had some beans that we had to rescue. The Roundup didn't quite work. We had to come back and spray with Cadet. We ended up hiring a co-op to come in and spray with another chemical, or with Cadet, just because I couldn't drive through the beans anymore. If I was going to buy a newer sprayer, because that tractor's got close to 10,000 hours on it, I was going to need to upgrade tractors too, and it'll do everything I need for that, so I decided I'd rather spend the money on this and have a sprayer just to go spray versus buying a better tractor and not putting very many hours on it. And because a new best way sprayer, I'm going to guess, is probably in the neighborhood of 35 to 40,000, depending on what bells and whistles you put on it too. So you buy that, upgrade to a newer tractor. Plus, if I was ever going to buy another tractor, I'd probably go to a front wheel assist, and they've got even less clearance than my two-wheel drive on the front axle. So this gives me the option. Last week I thought I was going to respray some corn because it was a farm we do ridge till and there was some grass coming, but we were able to sneak in before the next rain and get it hilled. So it gives you that option. You can spray fairly tall crops with it. It's maybe not quite as tall as like a Rogator or John Deere, but I don't foresee me ever having to spray anything that bad unless farming changes enough that we're applying fungicides and pesticides or something like that when the corn's super, super tall. But I think I just didn't let an aerial applicator do that anyway. One thing that's a real plus on this one is being able to load chemical while I'm pumping water. Their older sprayer, you had to put in water, add your chemical, and then put so much water and add your chemical and finish filling up, whereas this one I can be dumping in as I fill. Faster road speed, you can go down the road another 5 mile an hour faster. The one thing I did give up went to a 750 gallon tank, and where I had a 1200 before, but I usually never filled that. I usually only went to 1,000 on that one anyway. But and faster field speeds. You can run 11, 12 easy, and I'm still getting used to it. I'm sure you could run 14 if you were really used to it and had good level fields. You start running 9 or 10 mile an hour with the tractor, and I just thought it beat me to death. And this, if you could drive it 15 mile an hour, wouldn't be a problem. Actually, that was our second best way pull type sprayer. The first one we had only had a 48-foot boom, and the wings were manual fold, and that was a real chore. And they didn't lift high enough. I had one farm, when you come to the end, you had to fold the tip back every time manually to turn around because it was a gravity farm and there wasn't any end rows to turn on. So that's when I decided to buy the other one I had that had at least hydraulic booms that you could pick up, and went to a 60-foot boom with that one. So, well, each step was a step up because that first sprayer, we didn't even have a tractor with a cab on it. So it was an old 806 International, if you're familiar with that. Of course, then when you went to the next ones, then you had a hydraulic adjusted seat in the cab, which was better, but it's still not near the ride that this is. Just the bigger tires it's just so much smoother. Well, I've looked at the price of the big self-propelled four-wheel drives, and this is way more cost competitive. Comparing it to a John Deere, I would say if you put the same options on both of them, this one's probably somewhere between 50 and at the most 60% of the cost of the John Deere. and will do everything I need it to do. Especially in no-till, I feel if you need four-wheel drive to get through it, you shouldn't be out there anyway, because you're going to have tracks to contend with the following probably 2 years, if it's that bad. I did spray a field and went around a mud hole, and I went around it instead of going through it. I thought I stayed far enough away from it. When I looked back and seen the track I made, and I'm thinking, if I can go through that, why do I need four-wheel drive? But I can't really say on other guys' operations. Maybe for a four-wheel drive or front-wheel assist would be a benefit to them, but for my personal use, I probably would never buy one. I have a CTM that used to work for a co-op, and he was their sprayer guy that made the decisions on when their sprayer operators went out and sprayed and when they couldn't, and what chemicals to use and stuff. And he told me too, he said, if you ever go to a self-propelled sprayer, he said, I'd look at one of these. He said, you really don't need four-wheel drive. He says, they're light. And he said, those other ones can be really expensive to maintain. He says, especially be leery of buying a used one, because he says they get beat to death, and because they're, each one of the hydraulic motors I think is $11,000 or $12,000. So if I went clear from one farm to the other, we got one northwest of Geneva to my one southeast of Geneva would be about 21 miles. When we're doing like some of the post on corn, like this year we planted early enough that we didn't pre any corn, and we just posted behind the planter. Well, with just three of us, and Darren's, my son's running the planter, Bob sometimes is taking him seed, but if I just get somebody to move it to site, with 3,000 gallon, that's 4 fills for me, if I got enough chemical loaded on there. But sometimes somebody break away and help me, either take me back to the semi so I can drive it to my next site or whatever. And some places I have that aren't feasible to fill on the road really, so I may end up driving 3 miles back to the tender truck, but not bad. Just time savings. What you can get done is just, I was talking to a landlord this morning on the phone, and I got some beans that need to be sprayed at his, and I said, all I needed was 3 hours, and I'd have had the last 160 acres, and they're on 2 different farms 7 miles apart. I said, I'd have been done spraying. He goes, really? I go, yeah, it's that fast.